Hi, friends and friends of friends. Welcome to the Still Podcast Author Series Season 2. This season's guests are authors who write books for children, the young readers to teenagers, and even those who are still young at heart. During each episode, you will learn more about the writer and their books. I bet you will find a new author and new books to love. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoy an episode, please leave a comment or respond to one of the poll questions at the end of an episode, or follow me on one of my social accounts. And of course, tune in next time. Welcome to the Still Podcast Author Series. With me today is Marianne Sciucco. Thank you, Marianne, so much for joining me.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here.
I just think it's really impressive that you're both a nurse and an author. I'm curious how you find the time to do both.
Well, let me say one thing about when you're a nurse, you have a front row seat in the theater of life because you see everything. And every day is like a new story idea. So I spent a lot of years working in nursing homes and hospitals and came up with so much inspiration. It just is never ending. And I'm very interested in the whole human drama.
Mm-hmm.
So that always fascinated me. And that's how I came up with the story of my first book, Blue Hydrangeas.
I just think that's interesting that you say you love to watch the human story and the human drama, and now you're working as a nurse in a community college setting.
Right.
So I would hope there's less of the drama playing
There's
out.
a lot less drama. Yeah, it's much more low key. They have different issues than what I was concerned with in the hospital setting. Mainly the patients would be older.
Mm-hmm.
I was involved in a lot of dementia care, which inspired my first book. And now we, have things, a lot of benign issues, injuries. I don't feel good. I have my period. We do a lot of health education. That's a big part of what we do. So the students, they're really great. They're in school and they're there because they want to be. So that's a little different. So I enjoy the students a lot.
I love that you're in the community college setting. And of course, the book that I've read by you is Swim Season, which, it takes your character is in her senior year and she's working hard and she's thinking about which colleges. So it's kind of right there in the age that you wrote for.
Yeah. Yeah. It was inspired by my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter, Allison, started swimming when she was an infant, and she ended up swimming competitively when she was 12. So where we live, you can swim in club. So she did that. And then when you're in 7th grade, which is middle school, you can swim varsity at the high school, So she started doing that and swam throughout all of those 6 middle school, high school years, and then 4 years in college. So we had 11 years of competitive swimming. And my husband and I were very involved in all of that. And I spent hours and hours and hours sitting on those cold, hard bleachers, cheering on the team. We never missed a meet. We were there all the time. And it's a long day. If you've ever done a swim meet, some of them are like 6 hours long. And your kid only swims for maybe 2 minutes out of the entire time. My daughter was a sprinter, so her races were pretty much short. So there was a lot of time to sit and talk to people and observe. And that's where I got the inspiration to write this book.
You actually had me thinking of a couple things. So one, your main character, Aaron, is that how you say it?
Yep.
Okay. Yay.
Aaron with an A.
So your main character, Aaron, is a senior, but then you have another character that's just beginning in the middle school, and I cannot remember her name. I'm sorry. Charlie. But so they're both kind of reflecting your daughter's experiences in two different characters. So I love that.
Yeah.
And then
I love Charlie.
A couple of years ago during distance learning because of COVID, I had a student invite me to her swim meet. And I know nothing about swim meets and everything, but I make a big deal about students inviting me to their sports event. So I went. And so I got to experience all that standing around and waiting. And I was standing because I was a nobody and I was with my mom and we did a lot of standing.
Yep.
I can absolutely appreciate that. And what are you going to do with your time? You're going to write a novel.
Yeah, and it's funny when you're at the swim meets and they're all in their swimsuits and they have their caps on and their goggles. You don't know which one is your kid. So you're looking and there's, dozens of kids and you're looking around at them going, is that her? Is that her? I don't know. Is that her? Ask my husband, where is she? Is that her? No, that's not her. Don't you recognize your own kid? I'm like, no, I don't. They all look the same.
They don't do like numbers on the shoulder?
Funny. No, she didn't. They didn't have any of that. And, they don't really give you like a program. So you kind of have to learn like the sequences of the races, and then you would know where your kid was going to race, but then you might not know that. So my daughter, she was a star performer, so she always did the same races. So that helped me a lot. But a funny story, she had a friend, he had never been to a swim meet before, a really good friend of hers. So he decided he would come to a swim meet. He got so engrossed and involved in it. He looked at me and he said, "Oh my God, this is so exciting. I didn't know anything like this was going on." And I just laughed because, it's a race and races are exciting.
Yeah. And there's a lot of
It's
races
a
at a swim
race.
meet.
It's all races and races are exciting and cheering and, finish first and seeing it all pan out. And it's different than a lot of other sports.
Hmm. Yeah, I always watch swimming for the Olympics,
Oh yeah, me too.
right? With
Yes.
yeah, Katie Ledecky
Yeah.
and
Oh,
all
I
those
love
other
her.
ones.
So my character in swim season, Erin, is destined to go to the Olympics.
Hmm.
She will go. I mean, book ends in senior year in high school, but that is what happens to Erin. And she does go off to swimming college and she gets recruited. She makes the Olympic team. Her mother went to the Olympics.
Right,
Erin's mother. That's part of
right.
the story.
And I know she was leaning towards Cal. Did she go to Cal?
She does, yeah. That's where she wants to go to school. And
Excellent.
she wants to get away from her father and his family. So that was kind of one of the reasons why she chose that college. But that's where they wanted to go. Because that's
Yeah.
where all, big wigs come from, a lot of them.
All right. Cal Berkeley's about 30 minutes from here. So
Yeah. So
mhm.
that was her goal. But she's a very troubled character, this girl, and is going into her third high school. She's a senior. She's been bounced around a lot because of circumstances and her parents in their marriage and that they broke up. They got a divorce. And she went, her mother was a soldier. Her mother was a nurse. And she, after 9/11, because the story takes place not long after that, after 9/11, she was working at the St. Vincent's Hospital in the city, which is where most of the injured people would go. So the character, her mother was very affected by that, and she decided she wanted to serve the soldiers who went off to Afghanistan. And she goes there as an army nurse. She joins the reserves, goes there as an army nurse, and is injured. So while this is going on, her father finds another woman, and when her mother comes back, she goes out. She goes twice, I think, to deployment. Um, Erin's living with her dad, and then her mom comes home, and things are not going well. And then her mom gets deployed again, and is injured. And during all of that time, that when she comes back, her husband says he wants a divorce. So Erin was just spent her whole life in the pool. Swimmers at that level are usually swimming in the morning. They have some practice 5:45 a.m. They go to school. After school, they go to swim practice again for another 2-3 hours. And this is like 6 days a week, and they have meets. So she was just so wrapped up in her swimming, she didn't realize that her parents' marriage was falling apart, which meant that her home was falling apart. So I don't want to tell the whole story, but she ends up in this town living with her mother's best friend and her family for her senior year because she didn't want to live with her father and his new wife. And goes to this new high school. And at this point, she decides, I'm not going to swim anymore. I'm not going to win. I'll swim, but I won't win because she doesn't. When she puts herself at that level of competition, that's when her life fell apart. She was unaware of what was going on personally at home. She was underwater. That's what she says. My whole life fell apart. And where was I? Underwater. So she just wants to swim. It's her therapy. And what happens is she develops these very deep friendships with some of the other girls on the team. And nobody knows that she's an Olympic level athlete. They just think she's like, your average swimmer. And she tries to maintain that for the duration of the season. But a lot of stuff happens. And
Okay.
I don't
Sounds
want to give
good.
the whole story away, but you can, whatever you want to ask is fine.
Go with the one that's top on my head because I don't remember the back cover description, but
Mm-hmm.
when I was reading it, I was pleasantly surprised that she joined a church youth group. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was just so wonderful, and how they had a dance, the church had a dance, and how she was, reluctantly getting involved, and her best friend sang in the choir. And I really liked that part of the story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
my daughter sang in the choir.
Now,
So
was that in the description, or is that just like a nice
no,
little bonus?
no. So what I set out to do is to write a book that was about the swim season, but it was about the whole first half of the senior year.
Mhm.
So it starts in late August and it goes into December. So it encompasses in the book, the characters go through all of the like rituals that you experience in high school, going to homecoming, the homecoming game, the football games, the dance, their finals, the tests, planning for college, all of these things that happen as everybody has to go through. So I put them all through that. And then the one character, Mel, because Erin didn't really go to church, and she had stopped that, and she was kind of like unsure of her faith because she felt that her whole life fell apart, and well, where was God? He wasn't here for me. So she becomes friends with Melanie, and Melanie has this beautiful angelic voice and sings at the choir, and she gets to experience that and has some kind of like a little more like a spiritual awakening toward the end of the book, and kind of regains her faith.
What really drew me to your book, Swim Season, was I love reading about teenage female athletes. I mean, super competitive. When I first started looking for them about 10 years ago, there just weren't enough books out there. And so that was one of the big appeals for me, was just reading about her. And you're writing from your daughter's experience and from your experience as a mom. I guess I'm curious, like, how much of, like, do all the characters that inhabit the book kind of have different things that you or your daughter experienced?
Yeah, there were some things. We have Erin, who is very competitive, trying to like put that aside for now, and her friend Mel is also very competitive. She's based upon a good friend of my daughter's, her best friend,
Okay.
and she didn't always win, and she
Mhm.
tries so hard. And so that's Mel. She second place, third place, second place. She never really gets there. I think she does at least once in the story, but she's kind of like those kind of swimmers are the ones that they're always racking up points. So you don't always have to win to put your team in first place. So, and she's somebody that's steadily, consistent in bringing home second and third place points. So she's a valuable teammate. And then there's Erica, who's the butterfly swimmer, because they all
Mhm.
swim different strokes. The farmer's daughter. She comes from a farming family because we have a lot of farms out where I live. And she's also competitive. And then we have Tatiana, who is kind of the nemesis or the rival, Erin's rival. So when Erin goes to the school, starts at the school, one of the first things she finds out the first day of swim practice is there's this very, very special challenge for the swimmers on this team. And she made a scholarship challenge and said, every year she bumped up the money so that at this point, whoever beats my record, I'll give them $50,000 scholarship.
Mhm.
So there's a girl on the team. She's expected to break that record this year. She's came close the year before. For what reason or not, she choked and she didn't do it, but everybody's expecting her to get it. Now, she's also the rich girl in town. So she doesn't need money,
Mhm.
but her parents, her father in particular, wants her to win this challenge because he wants the glory. And nobody comes close. There's nobody else until Erin comes along. And Erin can beat that girl. And there's also the mean girl, which is Jordan. She's
Mhm.
Tatiana's best friend, and she really wants Tatiana to break the record because she rides on her coattails, and she really makes a lot of trouble. She's not a nice person. She hurts Erin a lot. So, and then
Mhm.
there's also like a little teen romance. She never had friends like this before, and she never had a boyfriend. So she experienced all of this during this swim season.
I got Swim Season by joining your newsletter, and it was such a wonderful bonus. It felt like really like two books in one.
Mm-hmm.
And I got it as a gift for joining your newsletter. Is it for sale
Oh
as
yeah.
well?
Yeah, it is for sale. It's on sale at most online booksellers, including Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can get it. You can ask them to get it at your local library. It's an audiobook, Kindle, and paperback. It's a pretty big book. It's just under 600 pages. So some people think, oh, some people have told me the book is too long. And then I got an email from a little girl. She writes to me and she says, "My name is Ava and I'm 10 years old and I read your book in 2 days.
Wow.
It's the best book I ever read. I love it. I'm a swimmer."
Oh,
That was the thing. I'm a swimmer. And so then her mother like wrote too and said that, yeah, it's true. She did read the book.
that's sweet. Yeah,
So
I
she,
was wondering how long it was because when I was about 6% of the way through, on an ebook, it said I
mhm,
still had 23 hours to go.
it's a
And I'm like, I know I'm
long
not the
book.
speediest reader, but so.
Yeah, it's a long book. And it took me a long time to write it. It took me 5 years.
Mhm.
And when I finished it, my daughter was in her, I think maybe in her junior year. And I said, "You got to finish this book because she's going to graduate and then you're not going to be in swim world anymore. So get it done." So I did. And I wrote the book for them, for those girls, so that they
Mhm.
could have something a story that is about how they live, what their life is like, and being in high school and being on the swim team and everything else that goes on. And it was a really easy book to write in the sense like that it follows a chronological order and it's already written. Like I didn't have to create senior year in high school because everybody does it pretty much the same way all across the country.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that like as a template. And so I just, I wrote a lot and then, I'm like terrible. Like when it comes to editing, I just have to fine tune and fine tune and fine tune and fine tune and drag it out until I think it's perfect. And it took me a long time to get to that point. And, could I have cut some of it out? I could have, but it was like, well, what am I going to cut out? I don't want to cut out any pivotal like events and there are so many swim meets in the season. So I didn't want to, and I didn't want to gloss over a lot of them. Like a lot of them you do, you just say, well, they went to the swim meet and they won and they didn't do well at the swim meet. But at most of the swim meets, there was some kind of action going on behind the scenes that was driving the story. So I said, I'm just going to, this is how I'm going to write it. And that's it. And only one person complained really about it.
And the nice thing is you buy the ebook,
mm-hmm.
not I've learned to buy like when it's the big book, I just buy the ebook because then I'm not feeling the heaviness when you turn the page. And so it's a lot easier to do.
Yeah, it's heavy. It's like 2 inches thick.
Oh my gosh. But look at that cover. I love the cover. It's beautiful.
That's the second cover.
It's the second.
Had a different cover. Yeah. But she's underwater because that was the whole thing. She's underwater.
Yeah.
She doesn't know what's going on. The other thing, Amanda Beard said it. She's an Olympic swimmer. In the water, no one can see you cry.
Oh.
And that was one of her things. In the water, she could cry and nobody would know. So the mom was an Olympic athlete. She went to the Olympics and she went to the tryouts and she didn't make it. That's what happens to the mother. She's like second place. So she didn't make the Olympic team. And was a nurse and she served in the army and on the guard. And she went to Afghanistan and gets injured and has in a blast. They were going to help some villagers. It was kind of like an off-duty kind of a thing where they were going to help people in the community. And somebody had a bomb and she ended up suffering injuries in the blast that caused her to have chronic pain. And so when she came back, she ends up getting hooked on opioids and starts stealing opioids from her job and gets caught and gets arrested and loses her job and ends up having to go to like this jail, but it's also like a rehab. But she has to serve this sentence for like a year. And so she doesn't see her mother. She's like in upstate New York. She gets to go visit her. I think she visits her like a couple of times in the course of the book. And she's very protective of her mother. They have the mother-daughter bond is very, very strong. And then her relationship with her father is she's just angry. She's got these stepsisters. She doesn't want anything to do with them. So there's a lot of angst. She goes, back and forth from like different highs and lows, depending on what's happening with her personal relationships.
Yeah, but it's nice how you gave both her and her dad and even her stepmom opportunity, some room to grow, we'll say.
Right. They do. They do grow a lot.
Yeah. So that's swim season. And I know when I first contacted, you mentioned how it's kind of your heart book and how you're used to speaking about your other book, Blue Hydrangeas.
Blue Hydrangeas. Yes. That was my first book.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that one?
Sure. It's very different. So Blue Hydrangeas was inspired by people I met in my work. At the time I was doing case management in a hospital and I was afloat. I used to like every day I went to work, I didn't know where I would be. I would cover for somebody that was out sick or on vacation or whatever. And I went to the rehab unit and I had a patient there, a woman who was like 86. She had Alzheimer's. She was there because she had fallen. She broke her pelvis and now she was going to go to a nursing home to have rehab. And I didn't have to visit them that day because I was covering for somebody else and they left a note that the plans were all in place and you don't have to see them. But for some reason I went in the room and I met them. It was her and her husband. Now she's like 86. Her husband, he's even older than her. He's very frail. The two of them, they had driven from Florida, the state of Florida, to New York by themselves. Like they did that every year. They were snowbirds. I couldn't even believe it because they just seemed like they couldn't handle anything like that. And they were doing fine until she fell and she got home and she broke her pelvis. So the son was there and his plan was that the plan was for her to go to this nursing home and his plan was he was going to drive them there. He didn't want his father to drive her there. So I said, that was fine, that you can absolutely do that. It's not a problem. And when I left them, all I could think about for the rest of the day and then that night was, what if they were to leave the two of them together without the son for some reason. Things got mixed up, and she left the hospital. Where would they go? What would they do? Because the story I came up with is that the husband doesn't want his wife to go into this place. He's afraid, once she goes there, she's never going to come out. And he wasn't ready to give up, and he didn't want to be alone. And he had promised her when she was diagnosed that he would stay by her side and they would stay at home. Because that's one of the things in dementia is that many times people have to go into nursing care because they can't be managed at home. And people are very afraid of that. And it's like the last resort. So he promised her that would not happen. So he picks her up, and she's having a great day, because she always did have a great day when she got out of the hospital, because when she's in the hospital, everybody's taking care of her. They're monitoring her blood sugar, her blood levels. She's hydrated. She's been eating well. They've been giving her, physical therapy and exercise. So she's always at the top of her game when she leaves the hospital. And then after a weeks at home with just him, she starts to slide and starts failing again. So when he picks her up, she's doing really well. And he decides that he's not going to bring her to the place. And so then the two of them go off on this journey, kind of to revisit their past and reclaim their future. They're on Cape Cod. It happens on Cape Cod. And they end up going all the way out to town, which is very familiar. The state of Massachusetts, if you see it on the map, it's got the elbow, looks like an arm, and Provincetown is the fist. And that's where they go, because they used to vacation there for years before. So it causes a lot of stress for their son when he discovers that his parents are missing. So it's a love story. It's kind of an adventure that they go on. And I love that story. It was my first one. And from that came Al's Authors, which is my nonprofit global community that I founded with two other women who had written books about Alzheimer's and dementia. And it's a very hard topic to sell a book on. And when we got together in 2015, we mainly just wanted to help each other to kind of find an audience and cross promote and things like that. And we just built something that is now, it's like 9 years old, and we have 400 authors in our collaborative. Yeah.
Wait, did you say 400?
Yeah, we're closing in on 400 authors in our collaborative.
All that are writing
I
about
wrote about a book about Alzheimer's and dementia, primarily from personal experience.
Okay, so mostly like memoirs, nonfiction.
A lot of memoirs, yeah, poetry. We're putting out a poetry book on June 1st. We do a podcast. That's what the podcast is about. We do a lot of virtual events. We have a book club that we do with another organization. We do a book of the month. We did one last night. One of my partners, it was her book. So that was really fun. And it's not easy. It's a very difficult audience to try. I think it's far easier to market a book to a bunch of high school girl athletes and dementia caregivers. But
yeah,
I wrote that, and then I wrote a prequel to that, because the book, it's in this Cape Cod bed and breakfast, and people used to always ask me about the inn, and they wanted to hear more stories about them at the inn. So I wrote a Christmas book, which is really pretty, very lovely. And now I'm working on another one called A Wedding at Blue Hydrangeas, and it's the wedding of their son. They get married at the house. So, and this is like, decades before she has Alzheimer's. So you kind of get to see how she was, before she got sick.
Nice. Which is so important. Yeah. I shared with you that I lost my mom to Alzheimer's. And after, you need to really remember who they were before, because the Alzheimer's completely changes them. So I can see how you write the story, the Alzheimer's love story, but then going back into the past and doing those prequels. I mean, that's kind of like what you do when your loved one passes. You're going back into the past and remembering all the good times. So I really like how you've done that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's and so the grandson's a swimmer in the book too. So I had to have that. I had to have a swimmer. I always have to have a nurse.
Do you have a website or an author, or do you have an author page at Amazon, or what's the best way for people to?
I have both.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a website. It's mariannesciucco.com.
Okay.
And then, you go on Amazon, plug my name in, and it'll show you all my books, and you can find my author page there. And I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and Threads and X, which, I can still hang out there a little bit, but it's not my favorite place. And Instagram, I can be there. So
Excellent.
people can reach me there if they want, or they can go to allsauthors.com. That's where I
Okay.
spend most of my time.
Allsauthors.com.
Yep. ALZ, short for
ALZ.
Alzheimer's. Allsauthors.com.
Excellent. Sounds
Got
like
a lot
you're
of stuff
everywhere.
going on. Yeah, I'm everywhere. So if anybody, and kids are an important part of like the dementia journey. I know a lot of people like, what does that have to do with children? Well, it has everything to do with them if it's their grandparent or parent,
Hmm.
and especially teens. Teens are involved in dementia care as well. So I know that you like more interested in young adult books and things like that. But you'd be surprised how many kids are doing caregiving duties before and after school. And now people have young onset Alzheimer's, which affects people usually in like their 40s or 50s. So these people could realistically have children in school, and children see what's going on. They're a part of it. So we have a lot of kids books in our organization, and
Okay.
young adult fiction.
Well, I will definitely check it out. I would not have
Yeah.
thought of that, but you're right. I mean, my sons were 17, 18 when
Yeah.
my mom was going through the main part of her Alzheimer's, when we knew it was
Yeah.
Alzheimer's, not just dementia.
Yeah. Some of my
Yeah.
partners, they had toddlers when they were caring for their
Hmm.
parents. I'm trying to remember if any of the books have athletes in them. Off the top of
Yeah.
my head, I can't think.
Athletes aren't a requirement. It's nice.
Yeah, I know you like to read that. So, yeah, so
So
that's it.
I'm curious, what is your daughter up to now? She swam all through college.
Oh,
Does she still swim for fun?
not really, no. She
Okay.
married a swimmer.
Oh,
So that's what I always tell her all the time. Swimming, look at what it gave to you. It gave you so many gifts. And you got a husband out of it too. And she swam in college. When she graduated, she stayed because she went to the master's program to become a teacher. And when she went back to school that first semester, she still had like a lot of her best friends were still on the team. So
hmm.
she would go to practice and she would go to the meets, and they had a new swim coach, Ryan, who that's who she ended up marrying him. But it was funny because they were destined to meet. She wanted to go to the school in upstate New York. She kind of planned on it, and we went there for her to meet the team and to see the school and everything. But the coach didn't choose to accept her. He was on that team, and he would have been a senior when she was a freshman, and he was a champion butterflyer. So then she ended up going to this other school, and she did her years there, and then in her senior year they had to hire a new assistant coach, and this guy Ryan, he went for the job and interviewed and everything, but he didn't get the job. And she would have been one of his swimmers. He would have been the coach. She would have been a senior. So they wouldn't have been able to have a relationship. And so then the next year came around and that swim coach left. So they needed another new swim coach. And then they hired Ryan. And that's how she met Ryan. So it was a great story. They were like destined to meet.
Yeah, it is a great story.
Yeah, they were destined to meet. And then, of course, by then there were no more restrictions because she was no longer on the swim team, which will probably be swimming.
Yeah.
It's a great sport. It's a great family sport. I liked it because I didn't have to be outside.
It's smart.
No, I don't have to worry about rain. I don't have to worry about snow. It's not cold. I love that part. And we had a lot of fun. We did a lot of traveling, and she was really into it. So, and she met so many great friends, lifelong friends, and you learn a lot from it, and the goal setting and meeting goals, and just she got a lot out of it.
Well, is there anything else
No, I
that
think
I
we
didn't?
covered everything.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me
Thank
on my
you.
podcast.
I'm glad I did.
Thank you for joining us. Feel free to subscribe, like us, rate us. Look forward to seeing you next time.